Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Jagged Alliance Deadly Games for DOS. This is a turn-based tactics game developed by Surtex Software, and they also published it back in 1995 as well, although at the time the development studio was known as Mad Labs Software. Although currently Strategy First holds the rights to this one, so they're actually selling it right now through GOG. I will have a link in the video description box to where you can get it if you want. But this was the pseudo-sequel to the original Jagged Alliance. It was really more of an add-on than anything else. And it was received fairly with mixed reviews, I guess is the best way to say it. Fairly favorably by most people, but a lot of people were also pretty put off by it. And that begs the question, why is that? Well, it focused on something very different from the original Jagged Alliance, and that kind of brought it down in a lot of people's eyes. So, I'll get to that when I get to the gameplay, but let's start with the presentation. Well, in terms of presentation, it's kind of mixed. In the visual department, it's pretty weak. The actual game graphics, not including the interface, are really pixelated sprites, and they're actually kind of hard to figure out what stuff is unless you're playing at a really low resolution. And then, of course, you can't really see anything, so it becomes even more of an issue. But sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between scenery and actual objects you might need to pick up or something like that. Sometimes it's hard to tell where things are coming from. You don't get a lot of viewing area in the screen, so that becomes kind of an issue. The top-down perspective becomes a little bit of a problem sometimes because then you have a hard time telling what the difference between some objects is. It's kind of a mess in that particular regard. It doesn't look terrible in terms of the quality of the sprites and such. It's just that it's kind of interferes with the gameplay. As far as the user interface goes, it's workable, but it's not really appealing in any way. I mean, it does its job, and that's about it. It takes up most of the screen, actually, which is kind of a problem because you need a lot of the screen to be able to see what you're doing. So you got this whole user interface around this small viewing area, and it kind of makes it a little bit difficult to play this particular game. The user interface itself is pretty easy to navigate, though, so that's not a big issue. As far as the sound goes, it has voice acting, which is well appreciated. In fact, the voice acting is pretty good for what it is. A lot of characters have kind of goofy personalities, and as a result, they're kind of played as such. And each character does have its own personality and its own specific voice, so, of course, they had a lot of voice acting going on in this. And it works out pretty well in the long run. The voice acting is fairly high quality. Music's kind of non-existent for the most part. It's just lull background kind of stuff, and you don't really notice it all that much. As far as sound effects go, then you're just looking at average sound effects for the time. Nothing particularly amazing, high quality, that sort of thing. Just stuff that got the job done, and that was about it. It's not impressive at all. Explosions in particular and stuff like that don't sound very beefy per se. But it works out okay in the long run. The presentation isn't the be-all, end-all for this particular game. But what is the be-all, end-all is, of course, the gameplay, because there's pretty much no story in this other than you lead a group of mercenaries through a bunch of missions. That's really all you need to know. You select those mercenaries from a pool, and they each have their own specific personalities and abilities and such. So they each have their own comments to make on the situation. They have weird personalities in a lot of cases that are kind of endearing, and so you might actually get a little bit attached to some of the characters as you go through the game. They don't really develop any, but they do have their own little amusing quips and such, so it gives the game a little bit more heart than it would normally have for a tactics game. As far as the actual gameplay goes, it's a series of chronological missions that, unlike in the original game where it had a strategic map where you would map out where you need to go for conquering sectors and such like that, this is all a very linear campaign. It's chronological order. And sometimes in between missions, you can get equipment from the trader, who is Mickey. And you just go in and complete the next mission, so on and so forth. There's also a mission editor that you can use, campaign and scenario, and that's kind of cool. It allows the replay value for this thing to go a little bit higher. And there's a variety of mission types that you can do, such as rescuing people, demolition, infiltration, all sorts of different things you can do. So there is quite a bit of variety in the gameplay. But the problem is they did throw in a problem with turn limits. You actually have turn limits in this game, and it can be very problematic when you're trying to play very carefully, because it is a pretty freaking difficult game. You will have your mercenaries die fairly often if you don't pay a lot of attention to what you're doing. So if you're trying to play carefully like I did, you would constantly run out of turns, because some of the limits are just completely ridiculous. It's stuff like, complete this mission in 8 turns. How? I have to go across the map in 8 turns? What? It doesn't make any sense in a lot of cases. So you have those particular issues. You have issues where the gameplay feels like it was made for multiplayer in a lot of cases. Enemy AI can be completely absurd sometimes. They seem pinpoint accurate from miles away, whereas your guys can't hit anything apparently. It's just a mess. So you have that tempered with the improved features from the original Jagged Alliance, including such things as augmenting your weapons with stuff like scopes or barrel extenders or even suppressors. You get heavy equipment like grenade launchers now as well. So you have that, but the problem is this game just isn't fun. And I don't know why it isn't fun. It's a tactics game, and it's difficult. So you'd think that the challenge would be enough to make this a worthwhile experience, but it wasn't. When I was playing through this thing, I kept feeling like there's something wrong with it, and I couldn't really place what it was. Maybe it was the top-down perspective interfering with things. Maybe it was just that the turn limit just really turned me off on this game. I hate turn limits and things. Hate it! So any time limit in anything is just annoying. So when you have stuff like that compiled with the ridiculous at times AI, it just makes the game not fun. So I can't really recommend this to anyone. I mean, if you're going to use it for multiplayer and you like the original Jagged Alliance, maybe you can get it, but I haven't even bothered with multiplayer. I don't know if it's any good or not. So I can't really comment on that. But it's really not all that worth playing. So there you go, folks. I have a link in the video description box if you want to check it out, but thanks for watching.